Okay. First of all, I just want to start off by saying thank you, God. And it's hard for me to say that as the target individual life is completely destroyed and they have bottom feeders every day that are some of the weakest human being, weak, fragile, finding empowerment and just doing what they need to do as perps, as bottom feeders that they are. But you have to be thankful. You know, these perps try to paint a reality that's so falsified, and they use a lot of children. Listen, or not even children, but very child-minded individuals, and for them, it's like them time to feel like there's some special forces, and they tell themselves they are war, and reality is supposed to be distorted by these retards, and they will say anything and bring up anything to try to disorient you from reality, distort reality. And I love to put that in this fucking retards' faces, the reality that they try to escape from. They love to talk about how my feet are going to be cut off and this and that. Listen, I know that torture is going to happen because I've been putting reality in their faces. But they want me to get lost in what torture I'm going to go through in order to forget the reality and put the reality in their faces. And you hear them talking to me via voice to skull. Voice to skull is what you're going to hear. It's this technology where they can pipe in voices into your brain. Right? And you hear them even creating characters and tonalities when interacting with you. They become these fierce human beings when in truth they're just nothings, like truly nothing. I'm not even trying to diminish or degrade them, but targeting some of these perps are truly living a fantasy. These losers of human beings are cowards.com. But when they involve in this program, because this technology allows people to interact with you remotely, you would think that this is some of the fiercest human beings. Then you see who's talking to you, and you're like shocked that this is this shit talking this fierce way. A child can do what they do to you, and some of them are children. But the way they talk to you, they want you to hear them as this mystical being. We torture you, we torture you, we did this and that. And you look at who's talking, these bottom feeders who came from truly bottom feeders. I mean, you gotta see who's talking to me. They are magically childish. With that being said, my organs are being destroyed. And this is because you're gonna hear what this is about. This technology, this weapon system is being utilized on that target individual, and we're slowly dying. They are applying this technology onto us. It's destroying that body, and this just slowly wasting me away with this technology. But if you see who's talking to you, if you see who's participating in that, you're like, oh my gosh, you should have been. You are so weak. Like, I'm just thankful that in my dying phase, I can look and know that you are such a bottom feeder. I don't even think you're going to make it to my age. But I'm glad I put the reality in their faces because they actually work for these governmental entities, which I love the fact that the empowerment they got out of them is the same. The same humiliating reality that I'm putting in their face. Today, what's happening is I'm being forced to get this nasty reaction, stimulations. What they do is they make me have this stimulation. For example, this is just what I saw not too long ago, and what happened once I saw this was some disgusting reactions. This baby, which be careful as they love to kind of create this like anxiety feeling to create some stimulation. But at this point, I'm kind of like not phased by it anymore. I think you become desensitized by how they try to scare you. Or this baby stimulation I got, and they still try to get to make me experience this disgusting. Which is like, oh no, we make you experience something you experienced when you're a kid. We linked it to you. This trash are retards. They are rewiring the brain and making you experience things that you will not experience naturally, organically. right? And then they use lingo to try to make you think that you should be acceptive of that because what's happening to your brain is somehow connecting your brain to some experience that you experienced when you were a child. And that makes sense now. These bottom feeders are trash and low life. They are manipulating the brain, and they've been doing that to degrade people. Target individuals all around the world have been saying the same thing. I'm glad that before I fade away completely, I was putting that in their faces so often. That however they move on from life, they all know there'll be something waiting for them. And it doesn't take much. I'm talking about some weak shit. There's no mistakeness about these bottom feeders. They're truly cowards. Maybe the mistakefulness is coming from the entities contracting this low life. But these trash are nothings. Even though in their mind they think they sound super mistakeful. They've seen my death in so many ways, but they haven't seen anything that's going to happen to them, and so much can happen to them so easily. And now I'm the one who's becoming this mystic being. Because this trash they escape from reality, and I put reality in their faces. Now, this experience they make me experience is the pedophilia type of torture that you're going to hear. You're going to clearly hear they do this manipulation. This is the way they degrade the brain. As they destroying my body, they also destroy my brain and make me experience these things. Every time they make me experience these things, they're like, oh, now you pay. And what they try to talk about is try to make me think that what I'm experiencing today is what I experienced when I was a child. And then they talk about, but remember what you did when you were in middle school. When I was an 8th grader, I did this damn thing to myself. An impulse act of a child who's 13, 14 years old, just maybe turned 14 years old. That never happened again. And so today, as a grown 30-plus-year-old adult, they're making me think my brain is just being relinked to me as a kid. Trash ass. But that's the things they do. And by the way, this program, you're going to clearly hear, is to just utilize human beings as test subject. So the test subject consists of children. So they torture children. The reality of what they're part of is what I love to put in their faces. I will never let these bottom feeders live their fantasy where also then they try to play these protectors of children and avengers of children when the reality of what they're part of is not only they rewire the brain in these ways, but they also torture children. This is the reality of what they're part of.
Making this video in remembrance of Targeted Individual Day, our third annual Targeted Individual Day. And I'm asking that every honest-hearted human being open their eyes to a crime.
My name is Jeanette. I am 56 years old and I live in Baltimore, Maryland. I am a victim of covert electronic harassment and torture. I am a target.
It's brutally painful. I have a house, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms.
This is what they do to kids.
Catherine Nestor, and I'm from Pennsylvania. This commission has spoken of a long history of abuse of the human research subject. Although no one mentioned MKUltra today, President Clinton recently apologized for this. My young child and I have been used as non-consensual test subjects. We have been subjected to COINTELPRO-like stalking, remote neural monitoring, and electromagnetic torture, resulting in psychological and physical damage. And I won't go into the details of that because I have 4 pages written in here that is very similar to Connie's testimony. Please do not wait 70 years to investigate this. I ask Dr. Amy Gutman to begin today.
I am currently a speech-language pathologist working in private practice with young children. I had a 7-year-old client who has autism, and she was the most significantly affected of all of my clients. I eventually had to tell this client to go to another clinic, and they used her to threaten the most torture in me as well as their most extreme forms of torture. For several months, she would cry and scream horribly during our therapy sessions despite having a great day at school. Same way that I do, but in severity. Right after I saw this child being suffocated, then I began to experience very extreme suffocation all day, every day, for about 2 months straight, and that's also when they made it worse when I eat. Then I also worked with a 4-year-old little girl with Down syndrome, as well as her 5-year-old sister who also has Down syndrome. I observed both of these girls suddenly grabbing their genitals in pain and verbalizing, "ow." I observed this at least.
This is the kind of things they do to people, to children. 4-year-old, 3-year-old, infants, all kinds. This can go on and on. And so, as they manipulate my brain to experience this thing, they're like, no, you pay for what you did as a kid. It's like what happened to you as a kid. No. You're making me experience this thing, and you're going to hear that's the tactic they've done to others. And it's clear that this is a governmental entity that's running this program. You know, you hear the noise campaign, the sirens. This is part of what they do. Because at the end of the day, who runs this program is the Department of Defense. And this is why everywhere you go, it follows you. And these DoD entities, you know the blessing of having this validation as they force you to get this manipulation? This is the reality of what's happening here.
Computers were examined. The amount of child porn I see is just unbelievable. In 2016, Daniel Payne, a top Pentagon security official, said that when workers' computers were examined, the amount of child porn I see is just unbelievable. Is this something that
you're put through polygraphs, you're put through a rigorous selection process. Why aren't these people weeded out? Why are so many pedophiles allowed to be given top-level security clearance? Remember, these aren't just people walking in off the street and saying, hey, can I get hired, can I get a job? You're put through an extremely rigorous background check screening process. It's called an SSPI, single scope background investigation. There are people, they interview you, they take footprints. They're not, for one, to talk about domestic surveillance operations, but number two, to ask the question, why are there so many pedophiles sitting behind?
There's so much pedophilia that a bill was created.
The CIA raping children and sexually assaulting children, and they're not being prosecuted? What are...
There's so much pedophilia in these agencies that in 2019, a bill called the National Defense Network Abuse Act was created because the Department of Defense was having their employees download so much child porn using the DoD computers and DoD network. 2019.
Investigation for links to the proliferation of graphic material called Project Flicker. Some 5,000 individuals have been identified as having subscriptions to child porn sites, including many DoD affiliated persons. So this ongoing national investigation has now prompted the House to introduce a bipartisan bill that would help the DoD stop the use of its network to, quote, possess, procure, or produce child pornography. Joining us to discuss this, investigative journalist Ben Swan. So Ben, the Pentagon already takes measures to limit worker access to stuff like porn by rolling out what they call the Personal Electronic Device PED policy, where workers have to drop off their phones and lockers before entering their offices. All their online searches are accessible by security if or when needed. Their Wi-Fi access is monitored in digital security sweeps. So how is this happening?
Well, it's happening because even though there is a certain amount of limitation on access, those who are working in the Department of Defense, clearly it appears to be thousands of individuals in the Department of Defense, are finding ways around this, specifically by using the Department of Defense IP addresses and also apparently peer-to-peer sharing within the department's network. So this study that was done on this issue, and it is pretty horrifying, Manila, to consider this. It shows that the Department of Defense ranked 19th out of almost 3,000 networks in terms of peer-to-peer sharing of child pornography. That is absolutely incredible. This bill attempts to essentially say, look, we're not doing enough to stop it from coming in, but we're also not doing enough in the Department of Defense to go after those.
I will never let these bottom feeders, who are obviously contracted to implement this program onto people, live their fantasy. You're going to clearly hear that this is a program where they're using human subjects as guinea pigs and utilize these different cognitive warfare tactics and other technology to destroy the body and the mind. And we're just guinea pig to this 21st century weapon system. I will never let these bottom feeders live any of their fantasies. The way they've manipulated my brain is so degrading. But I will never identify with these manipulations. And I recognize the manipulations. They try to change the lingo. It's like, now we linked it, we connected, we paired it. Now you just altered my brain for me to experience that. Target individual, stay strong. And hear this trash for what they are. Let's see them for what they are. And don't get lost in their delusion. These trash are bottom feeders and they'll get theirs. Today they find strength in doing these things to people because they're empowered by these governmental entities with so much issue with child porn. But the truth, they're just weak low life that find strength in this nastiness. Stay strong and see this low life for what they are. And know that justice will be done for what they've done to us.
In 1965, DARPA launched Project Pandora, which studied the possibility of using microwave radiation to control human behavior. The project reportedly ended in 1969, but DARPA's investigation of how machines can affect and possibly control the brain continues to this day. Human mind can be altered. In 1965, DARPA launched Project Pandora, which studied the possibility of using microwave radiation to control human behavior.
Of innocent citizens being controlled by government-sanctioned experiments? Is Cheryl Welch telling the truth, or are her claims absurd? Just another conspiracy theory that's impossible to prove? Maybe. But not if you listen to Nick Begich.
I think there's some good evidence that Cheryl Welch and many of the other people I've spoken with have been victimized by this electromagnetic mind control experiments. The weapons of this century aren't bombs and bullets and ordnance, but electromagnetic energy targeting the human being, which is a greatest revolution in military affairs since gunpowder.
Begich is an expert in government mind control. He is convinced the Pentagon has mastered a technology once thought to be science fiction, the ability to broadcast information directly into the human brain.
Our government began spending a lot of time looking at how to modify behavior of human beings. Going back to the Korean War, in fact, in a publication, Low Intensity Conflict in Modern Technology, they have a chapter on electromagnetic weapon systems, being able to not just to debilitate someone, but actually even to stimulate certain activities within the brain.
But how?
HARP is the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project, which started as a joint effort of the Air Force and Navy. This is a very large array or field of antennas based in Alaska, radio frequency antennas.
HARP antennas transmit powerful radio signals into the upper atmosphere to study the effects on wireless communications. But Begich says HARP can also be used for more sinister ends.
HARP has announced several other programs and campaigns, and there's two areas that I got very concerned about. One was weather modification applications. The other was the effect on human beings. If you can modulate a signal that the brain locks onto, recognizes, and begins to mirror or follow the frequency following response, the brain rhythms change, then it creates a chemical cascade within the brain and the emotions change. Now the resolution gets finer and finer and finer. And it used to just to be about triggering emotions. You could change people's brain chemistry pretty readily, change their emotional state pretty easily. But when you get down to the idea of thoughts and being able to manipulate those, that requires a different kind of sophistication.
Can we hear sounds?
Designed to interact with the human nervous system in order to remotely pick up on someone's neural network or EEG and not only receive that and monitor it, but manipulate it and place it back into the victim to control their emotions or control their actions or bodily functions for that matter. The other more recent term we have for that is EEG heterodyning or EEG cloning. The difference between EEG heterodyning and EEG cloning would be, let's say, me remotely receiving your EEG and then duplicating it and putting that in another person to give them your same thoughts or feelings or physical reactions. EEG heterodyning would be receiving your EEG, manipulating it to put it back inside your head to give us a desired physical reaction or emotional reaction.
With external fields of all kinds. For radio frequency, you can look at the Radio Frequency Dosimetry Handbook, 1986, University of Utah, produced for the Air Force. It gives you the resonant frequencies for each vital organ so that you can send in a radio signal that will couple with the liver, the kidneys, the lungs, and cause them to malfunction so that you can degrade the performance of your adversary. The new weapon systems being developed today will attack the mind, the body, and our physiology on an energetic level. Not with bullets and bombs. It's a perfect Republican weapon. No offense to Republicans here, but you don't want to destroy the property. You're going to have to rebuild it afterwards. This is a weapon systems of the 21st century. It's the very beginning of it in a lot of ways, but the research goes back over 50 years.
My name is Dr. John Hall. I'm a medical doctor from Texas. As I understand the memorandum from the President, it's for you to determine if current legislation is adequate in protecting individuals and if there's any ongoing experimentation. In reviewing the common rule, it's very obvious that there's a lot of loopholes to informed consent. All of the horrific experiments you've mentioned, Willowbrook, MK Ultra, radiation experiments, mostly were done without informed consent. They were funded by the DoD and intelligence agencies, where I'm not even so sure you would know if there's an IRB, much less if an IRB is looking at informed consent. As a physician, relative to some of what you're hearing today, in the community, we are seeing an alarming rate of complaints of use of electromagnetic weapons, microwave auditory effects, silent sound spectrum, EEG cloning, which has taken the lab out of the laboratory and into the home. Most of these, from the research that we reviewed, can be done remotely. It seems to be more weapons research than medical research. I personally corresponded with upwards of 1,500 victims, all complaining of identical complaints from every state in the nation of being exposed to electromagnetic radiation, non-ionizing radiation for the use of cognitive control or behavior control. I've submitted a paper to you, and there's another paper submitted to each member from another physician in Kansas City alluding to the same thing.
You do that, you can control them using neuro-linguistic programming techniques. You're rewiring their thought processes and brains. And so this gets into what's called offensive information warfare. And they used it, I believe, in the Gulf War. You can call it a eugenics program even. But also walk them to their, they want to see if they can, hyper game theory. How do you, they want to see if they can manipulate people to do things that are irrational, but also walk them to their death. And so you can call it a eugenics program even. And they need to sample all cultures, language throughout the world to define their probability matrices of which tricks, techniques, deception works. So how do you control a brain? Most people don't believe that. Well, you can't control me. I have my own free will.
V2K, or voice to skull. This involves the projection of voices, noises, and music directly into my mind to communicate with me in real time and at the speed of thought. And it also includes the manipulation of thoughts, emotions, and perceptions in the person's mind. Additionally, the targeting is all highly perverted and sexual, as well as just
It is dramatic. It's somebody trying to end my life. It's somebody trying to end who I am as a person. It's somebody trying to take over my mind, putting thoughts of pedophilia. This disgusting things. You saw where I was going with that first word. Disgusting things that I don't even want to talk about because it makes me sick. I don't even like those words in my mind. But it is what it is. So I have no choice now but to acknowledge that there are people in my surroundings or whatever they're doing. I don't know how they do it. I don't care. I don't know if it's through weapons. I don't know. I don't care.
This is a common breakdown tactic of belief systems and the human will. In no-touch torture, the techniques are more psychologically specialized for each target. Most common examples include homosexual targets that are forced with voices that are derogatory to their lifestyle and similar mental images. Almost all targets are forced to view child pornography in their minds. And vice versa.
They use these monarch-style torture programs, like it's based on sex and trauma. So they're gonna traumatize you. They're gonna use your libido to get back at you, and
this technology can be used to sexually manipulate the target. It can make the target feel sexual arousal.
Experience what is referred to as malodorance. This is the alteration of the smell sensation so that I am often made to smell various things, including smoke, burning, dirty diaper, or baby powder, which they sometimes combine with the pedophilia type of torture, including the threat of planted dreams and form of torture. They coordinate the voice. I really mean extreme. I experienced an entire night with forced spontaneous orgasms repeatedly all through the night, one right after another, with maybe around 1 hour of sleep or so, as I lay immobilized in my bed.
In my mind, I can hear my own voice. I told them I'm going to make you pay for all of the years of torture that I've taken, and all you are going to me and my family. Ben said the slaves began a program of perversion. First was with my dog. I am very playful with my pet, and suddenly one day that I was petting him I felt strange, in the sense of the word. I thought, this is strange, and then afterwards that strange sensation continue. Then in that moment I realized that was impost, so I thought, look at this losers, don't know how to put me down, and they are doing this. So I told them that I know what you are trying to do, and I started laughing, and then I said again out loud, you'll never take my will, ASS, so just to show them that I meant what I said, I kept playing with my dog, and even though that attacks continue, I don't let them get me. Today they continue with the programming of perversion, but this time they are aiming in the use of people, better said young people, also children and homosexuals. When I aggravated them I used able to impose any information on the brain of a person, presumably by some kind of waves, which in the mind take the form of voices, thoughts and images and imagination. In addition to this kind of implanting information that they need, they manipulate the psyche so that the information is written into your memory. Then by stimulating the certain regions in the brain they can retrieve this information and present it as your own memory. This is the conclusion that can be made judging by the influence they have been making on me with their psychotronic weapons, for example artificial thoughts, imagination, and mental torture.
I also often see highly disturbing pornographic images and videos, including highly disturbing pedophilia type of images and videos when I close my eyes.